Welcome to the Peak Performance and Peak Satisfaction podcast with Master Executive Coach Sherry Gregoff. Sherry helps business people perform better, get rewarded handsomely, and actually enjoy their work. After having her own career turnaround, she now helps other high-powered business professionals experience the same. Join the movement to work differently.
Welcome to the podcast. It's great to have you here. January is the season for annual incentive compensation conversations. Money is one of those topics that we are taught to avoid at the dinner table, but come this time of year, we wish we had all the skills and expertise to navigate these emotionally charged discussions with ease. Whether you are glowing with your compensation outcomes and the ones you delivered to your teams this year, or are feeling salty and worried about losing team members, this episode is for you. Money talks, and today we are talking money and all the unspoken myths and effective strategies that don't usually see the light of day. Before we jump in, I want to shout out one of my clients who had a win in this area. Here is the quote from her. "I tripled my income to multi-seven figures, not from working harder, but from speaking up and being recognized for my extraordinary work and results." This client works in an industry and company where there is high risk and high reward. Comp outcomes can be highly volatile year over year. In asking questions and articulating her value year over year, she has learned the overall firm approach. The starting baseline is last year's figure, with the business outcomes driving the overall direction of change year over year. Managers try to smooth the employee experience and prioritize that over any attempts at meritocracy. Winning teams and individuals subsidize the rest of the group for that smoothed-out experience in a business that on the whole is shrinking. All of this context has been important to keep the high emotions and tendency to take outcomes personally in check. But beyond understanding the comp landscape, this client spoke up and articulated her value add to the business in concrete, quantified terms. This made the argument for her compensation to grow in line with her growing results. She did her homework and was courageous enough to have the difficult conversation. By focusing on the facts, she secured a significant increase beyond the figure she was originally given to triple her compensation in 1 year. Similar victories are shared by all of my clients, and I have experienced it too in my own career turnaround. So let's hop to today's podcast content and get you on your way to experiencing this also. Part of what I offer my clients is to help them get rewarded handsomely for their work. Compensation is just one of the critical factors on how we get rewarded at work. More on that later. But for now, let's hone in on compensation. First, a word on money in general. People get weird about money. It goes along with politics and religion as topics to avoid. As a result, though, we don't speak up about money in the workplace either. It's more likely that we bottle up our feelings, whether that is celebration, consternation, or capitulation. We shove those big feelings down and don't talk about it until we boil over with emotion. Sometimes that's walking out on a job having left lots of money on the table in value created there. Well, let's get comfortable because we are talking money today. All the conversations that you can't have with your manager, your family, your partner even, we are having it here. Compensation, the income we receive in exchange for our contributions in our work. Even just that definition of it starts to hint at why it is an incredibly sensitive topic and time of year for business professionals. A measure of our contributions at work. The number itself is easily measurable, so we take that metric to the bank, literally and figuratively, as an assessment of the value of our work. When our work is our primary identity as human beings, in our minds, compensation can quickly become a measure of us as human beings. It's a number in black and white on a paper. So if we are wondering about the quality of our work, how significant it is, whether we belong, whether we stand out, whether we are safe and secure, mash that all together and you can see how this number quickly becomes more than a number on a page. It scratches just about every itch, many of our basic human needs for security, contribution, significance, and belonging. This is how compensation can take on a massive amount of importance to the business professional. Then there are the strategies employed in the conversation itself. First up, poker face instead of celebration. There are the individuals who take the neutral response, show no reaction tactic, hear the number, and respond in a very measured and pre-calculated way to not show appreciation for fear of overshowing their hand and securing a lower than planned number the following year. This strategy can backfire. If a manager went to bat for you and secured an outsized increase for you, and you play it cool with your poker face tactic, it can be received as ungrateful, and that manager will be less likely to do a repeat performance on your behalf. Use this tactic with caution and consider just how long the celebration actually lasts. For something we put a lot of emphasis on during the season, it can be an afterthought the rest of the year. So celebrate those good outcomes when they come before its memory fades. Just being thankful to be here. Capitulation. Tactic number 2. This seems like an appreciative, accurate, and noble way to respond. If you were just paid your annual incentive compensation after layoffs and survived, it may also feel logical. I have seen it used against corporate professionals, however. A company may decide that an individual should be happy enough with being associated with the corporate brand that they don't also need to be compensated fairly to boot. While humility and appreciation are always in style, just don't de-emphasize the value that you bring to the organization by leaning too heavily on this. If an employer thinks their brand cachet is what keeps you there, they will be less motivated to incentivize you everywhere else. Then third, there's the outright compensation consternation. I'm dismayed and I'm not afraid to show it. In a way, we can always be disappointed. Who doesn't want more compensation? Watch out here for the someday trap. Consider how many times from the start of your career that you set a milestone for your comp and thought, someday, when I earn that amount, then I will be happy. Then you checked that box and kept right on chasing the next milestone. This can become an endless chase, so be aware of it and make someday today. Some of the big feelings that come up are purely in response to authority. Who are you to decide what I am worth? Whoa. Other times, it's entitlement. I am entitled to making a certain amount. This figure can come out of thin air, be just an increase from last year, be based on water cooler talk of what other colleagues are earning, or these days, from doing online research on websites meant to capture this data from employees, or compensation levels that are published in reporting of public companies or job postings. Here's the part to be careful about. When looking for comps for your earning, take a closer look. It's easy to ignore distinctions like location, years of experience, scope of role, when we want a better outcome for ourselves. It's also easy for numbers you see to be taken out of context. A similar title does not mean a similar impact or even a similar significance of the role within the organization. Because of this hierarchical determination of your compensation, there's always this deep fear of being taken advantage of. And that is the reason for all the strategies. The fear that if we don't speak up, the default is to get as much out of us as employees for as little investment as possible. However true that might sometimes be, I will point out a few things. Never speaking up until you quit isn't in your best interest. Complaining every year because you feel entitled to comps that you don't match up to is also not a good look. So one rule of thumb is to take the big emotions that come and unpack them, whether it's anger, disappointment, or shame. Consider what is underneath it. Not feeling valued? Maybe you're interpreting your comp outcome to mean that your contributions are not significant. Feeling rejected? Poking at that need of ours to feel belonging and acceptance in our comp outcome read like we're an outsider. Feeling embarrassed about not stacking up to others and having to report back to your family? We're interpreting comp as threatening our livelihood or security of our lifestyle. Finding what you are most defensive about is key. What are you making that compensation figure mean? So if you are making the comp outcome mean that you didn't do a good job and you're seeking external validation, have this conversation gently with your manager. I'm interpreting this number that I missed expectations on my performance and contributions. Is that accurate? If so, how can I improve? Let your manager explain whether there is room for improvement, or whether it was factors outside of your control that resulted in the number, or that it's actually a strong outcome compared to your department average. Whichever scenario it is, this is helpful clarity. We often assume without really getting the facts. If you're making the compensation figure mean that you are an outsider and rejected by your organization, have this conversation gently with your manager. From what I gather, my outcome was subpar to the organization. I'm worried this means that I'm not wanted here. Is this a signal to me that I should be looking at other opportunities? Now this is bold, so warning, it's not for the faint of heart. I tend to be a straight shooter. Not every manager responding to this will be. But giving them the window to be honest with you might actually let you see when the writing is on the wall, so you can get your ducks in a row and line up your next opportunity before this one dissolves. Or, of course, the manager may express that you are an important part of the team and rally behind you. Once again, either way, the clarity is useful. If you are making the compensation figure mean that your lifestyle or even your well-being is at risk as a result, let's do a gut check. This is a natural and common response. However, feeling this way about our compensation is usually a clear indicator of how we have been managing our money more than anything else. If you are listening to this podcast right now, you have a certain level of wealth. Yes, you. Only 63% of the world has access to internet. If you haven't had to worry about where your next meal is coming from, you are doing well in my book. So if a compensation outcome feels like a threat to your security, consider that more deeply. Is it more a threat to your lifestyle? Having to forego luxuries that you have come to enjoy? And I don't mean the yacht. It could be your daily Starbucks habit. If a single outcome can have a huge impact on your quality of life degrading, consider how far beyond your means you are living. I have a longtime mentor repeatedly remind others about not living off of income that is not guaranteed. In coaching my clients, I notice distinctly how calm we are when we have emergency funds saved away, how much lower the stakes are if we could manage and have a plan for a job disappearing unexpectedly. It's a wonderful piece of advice. Don't make your variable compensation outcome a life or death moment by managing your funds accordingly. And don't take to hostility as if someone was threatening your life, when really it might be on you for counting on money that's variable to be fixed or moving in a fixed trajectory. So those are the 3 common reactions and why, but what do we do about this? First, know how compensation is decided in your organization. Do research, ask questions, Understand your company's financials enough to be dangerous. Look at the leading indicators. Consider how much of your compensation outcome is directly within your control. For structured compensation approaches, there are many variables. Sometimes this helps because when one figure is declining one year, another figure may help. But more often than not, to have an outstanding outcome, all variables need to be cooperating. Which means, many years, it feels like there is always a reason for compensation to not be better than your dreams. Second, consider the level which compensation fluctuates for your role or in your organization. Sometimes the compensation philosophy sounds like last year with an adjustment up or down, or it can be starting at zero and earn your incentives from that baseline. Some organizations aim to smooth the individual experience as much as possible, while others lean into meritocracy heavily and let the chips fall where they may with the signal that they send individuals. There is no right or wrong, but it's important to have this context. If you're hoping for a small and steady increase for years to come, and your role is one with intense volatility based on business outcomes, that's something to be reconciled. Otherwise, you will be disappointed more often than not. With big risk comes big reward. So for some, that volatility is a worthy trade-off for an overall upward trajectory. Know your tolerances and select your job accordingly. And resist the temptation to look at the trend line in this way. It will take me years to recover and get back to my high water mark. In a volatile and cyclical industry, there will be peaks and troughs. By making your high water mark your baseline, you are setting yourself up for heartache. It's a good data point, but it's not what you are owed or entitled to forevermore, especially when your comp outcome is dependent on variables that you don't directly drive, such as firm or department performance. Third, articulate your value contribution clearly. Oftentimes we can assume people at work around us know what we are doing, how hard we are working, the extracurriculars at work that we contribute to as good corporate citizens, how much we care and take work home. Your manager may not have any idea what your clients, stakeholders, and teams have to say about your work. They may have lost sight of the concrete value add that you bring. So don't leave this to chance. Articulate your value add in a compelling way on a regular basis, at one-on-one catch-ups, using metrics that quantify impact to the bottom line, having heavy-hitting goals, and reporting their completion. As leaders, we are so used to saying we, but this is a time to say I. If we don't claim responsibility for our amazing work, it will remain unclaimed, and the benefit of your work may be vague. Don't leave it to chance. Proactively communicate about your contributions to keep at least your manager informed, and solicit feedback for improvement to incorporate that too. We are creating the ironclad argument for increasing the value you receive in return, be it compensation, promotion, flexibility, and more. Do not skip this step, however uncomfortable it may initially feel. Fourth, remember, compensation is just an exchange of value. Based on the value you created at your workplace and whatever other variables play a role, this is your outcome for a specific year. It's not a commentary on your lifelong potential in the profession. It is a single result based on a finite time period. It is what your employer decided was an appropriate payment in exchange for your contributions at work. It is a data point for you. Is this compensation worth it to me to continue doing the work that I do? We don't often ask this question point blank, but I will ask it again. Is this compensation worth it to me to continue doing the work that I do? It's the question each of us must answer, not every year at bonus time, but every day we decide to show up at work. For most of us, employment is done in free markets. That is, we are not bound to a particular role, nor is our employer forced to employ us. This is employment at will. Either party can terminate the employment agreement at any time, which means if the exchange of value is off in a scenario, the employee leaves and gets paid the appropriate amount for their work after exploring the free market for jobs. If an employer feels the exchange of value is off in a scenario, they terminate the employee and have that work done at the pay rate that they believe it is worth. But so often, we feel locked in, trapped with no options. I think I'm worth more than I'm compensated, but who really knows? We can always know our options. We can always be assessing open roles that would be a fit for us, to see what's interesting, to see how it compares to our current role. This is how we go beyond the online research to the real deal. We interview for a role and receive an actual offer. Then we have a better idea what our role is worth in the free market. This is always an option. Don't stay in a role and feel torn up about being taken advantage of. Have a look around. Choose your best option. It's the way to find peace with your decision to stay or leave. If you don't know your options, all this drama is in your head, unverified. To that end, come compensation season, all of a sudden we feel like the paycheck is the only reason why we show up to our jobs, when in real life, we know that's not the full story. There are all kinds of conditions that accompany that paycheck, and the total package is why we show up to work. If you are fresh off a compensation outcome and emotions are running high, it can blur our ability to weigh the facts. Let me jog your memory. Here is a healthy list of the other factors, the intangible benefits that are not quantified in our paychecks, that we often lose sight of when staring at the number on that paycheck. First up are other benefits. This includes work from home or your commute, time required and quality of that commute, the flexibility afforded to you to pop out to train for that marathon or catch the kids' school play, the level of security within the role. Are peers laid off each year, or is there job stability? Health benefits, medical and beyond. Companies are hitting dimensions across the lineup of wellness these days. The potential for earnings upside, the level of volatility in your earnings. Second, there are factors that contribute to the quality of your work experience. The content of the work itself. Do you find it challenging and interesting? How connected you feel to the people you work with. The level of autonomy and authority in your role. Does the work or industry match with your interests? Do you feel belonging, accepted, and heard in the office? Is there variety within the role that keeps you interested? Third, how aligned is the role with your priorities? Does it come with a level of status or cachet, the brand or the title? Is there a greater purpose that you feel called to there? Do you feel connected to the culture? Do you agree with the corporate strategy and business model? Does the organization value and celebrate you? Fourth, there is the opportunity for advancement. Is there a growth opportunity and a career path? Are you learning something new? Does it match well with your skill and abilities? Are you set up for success there? Is it a meritocracy? Do you have a fair shot at opportunities? Phew, it's a long list. Now, some of these items may not be important to you at all. That's good to know. Consider what it is that you do value and how your role stacks up. The value that it gives you beyond the paycheck. Now, don't use this against yourself. Oh, the people are so nice, so I should stay. This isn't a casual thing that you lightly consider and then just lock in and stay on autopilot. Consider if a different role would offer you more total value than your current role. Explore others if it feels right. Know your options. Now, if you decide to stay and you're feeling compensation consternation or capitulation, consider how to shift your perspective. This is just an exchange of value. Here are all the reasons why I stay, what I value from that long list beyond the paycheck. Make your peace with your decision because you are making it eyes wide open. Nice job. Except if there are variables to your compensation that are outside of your control and even your manager's control. Fighting the Fed on this annually is not good for your blood pressure. Ask questions, know where you stand compared to your group and your company. If after considering it all, you want to know your options, consider what would make you leave. Does it exist? Are they interested in hiring you? How does it stack up to your current work situation on all the dimensions that are important to you? And finally, when it comes to money and work, remember that person on the other side of the table is a human, just like you, with lots of emotions on this topic, just as uncomfortable as you are talking about money after we have all been programmed to avoid it. They may not have full control. They may be getting rough news today too. We are all in this together. At the end of the day, it's just money. It's not your self-worth. If you truly feel you aren't treated right, it's a free market, so go out there and get what you want. If it doesn't exist, that's good information too. I hope you feel better informed, better armed to cut through the high emotion and make intelligent decisions on a sticky and sensitive topic. And when you are considering your value and the value of your time spent in this world, don't forget about everything outside the walls of that office and outside that profession and title. There is a whole wide world outside the matrix. In the end, it matters more. This number isn't a measure of your self-worth. You are infinitely valuable, even without this job. What would those who care about you have to say on the topic? I bet you as a human are far more valuable to them than you and your profession. What will your response be to that question when you are sitting in the rocker towards the end of your life? It's been evidenced time and again that people looking back on their lives never wish they worked more or harder to earn another dollar. This is a number in time, a day in time, a season. Don't let it tear you up. Gather all the facts and context and give yourself a finite amount of time to decide what comes next. Recommit to your role for the full package of value that it gives you, or know your options by applying to other roles and letting the free market speak. This is how we remain empowered and leading our careers. This is how we keep that performance and satisfaction intact, even through comp season. Until next time.
Looking for support in applying the principles and strategies in today's episode? Sherry coaches clients one-on-one as their trusted confidant and advisor, helping each client create the work and life they had only dreamed of. To schedule your complimentary career strategy session, go to sherrygregoff.com/apply to book time with her today. It's one simple step that can change everything.